it's obvious now that we have reached a massive new kind of level of failure in this system. You know, we've got overcrowding at Manston. We've got hotels now used not just for block booking of migrants, but also now for the booking of some floors where they will share space with people who have paid to be there. I mean, it's absolutely incredible what's going on, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. I agree entirely. I mean, one thing that I've been slightly taken aback over is the fact that this all seems to be blamed on Suella Braverman, and that somehow this is all her fault. And I'm as I say, I'm a bit confused about that. I can understand why a politician, why the opposition will look for an opportunity to be critical of the government, but we mustn't lose sight of what has happened. I think something like 78 short of 40,000 so far this year. We've had nearly 7,000 this month. It's the speed and the scale of what's going on that is the problem. It was always going to be inevitable, frankly, that the facilities being provided were inadequate. Now, it takes time, I know, and I'm sure that the government is actually going to do its level best to address the problems. But to lose sight, to forget why this is all happening, I think is part of the problem, frankly.
It really is, because you've got a border force basically that doesn't know what to do about all of these numbers coming in. The numbers clearly are increasing exponentially with every week that goes by. You know, I'm not even sure that the numbers will go down much between now and Christmas, because the weather might not ever be that bad, and it doesn't seem always to stop them anyway.
No, I don't think for 1 second that the numbers will go down. If anything, they will go up. And all this debate about providing the right facilities on arrival when people get here, all that does is, frankly, encourage the traffickers to ply their evil trade. I really strongly believe that this problem has to be tackled at source. The EU has clearly lost control of all those coming into its own territory. There were 640,000 asylum applications last year. There's something like, well, when I last looked at it in May, there were something like 240,000 irregular entrants, illegal entrants. It's probably well over 300,000 now. The EU is today or yesterday signed a deal with Egypt precisely because of the problem that we're now facing on the channel. So I think that part of the solution, of course, has to be working with the EU and working with the French. And that really is to be welcomed.
Yeah, absolutely right. On Migration Watch's Twitter, I noticed that you've got a fact check there, and it says, "We have plenty of routes for genuine refugees and those in need. Don't be misled by the twisted distortions of the Open Borders Brigade." Now, I retweeted that. Tell us a bit more about what those routes are and how they could come in a different and possibly more legal way.
Well, it's not a case of coming in more legal ways, but the fact is that we're already dealing with hundreds of thousands of people who are coming here. Now, you could argue that coming from Hong Kong or coming from Ukraine is different circumstances, maybe, but nevertheless, these are people who want refuge, who are seeking refuge, and we're providing it. There are Afghans coming over here. There have been Syrians. There were Iraqis. There are any number of regular routes. And one thing that we have learned in bringing people over is that you've got to have the accommodation.
Yeah.
The Scots, not so long ago, had to put a hold on their scheme for Ukrainians because they didn't have the housing. And this is really part of the problem with regards to placing those who are coming here at will. They're arriving here with very little check, either from where they set off in France or indeed after they get to us.
Well, that's right. And every country in Europe is dealing with this in various different ways, right? Denmark was able to repatriate a load of people. I think they paid them, actually, to go back to Syria. You've got Sweden basically deporting people who they consider to be illegal migrants. You've got Turkey allowing many people who are coming there from Syria to sit on a border because they won't let them in. You know, there's all sorts of different aspects going on around Europe, right, and various parts of it. Everybody seems to be doing it better than we are.
Well, I'm not sure that they are, to be honest. I think that the EU's mess, which is largely of their own making, is even bigger than ours. But that aside, but you mentioned Turkey. There are millions of asylum seekers, of refugees in Turkey that the EU is paying for. So the EU is not above making arrangements to keep people away from their borders and away from their territory. I think that this problem has to be tackled collectively. We have to do it together deal with it internationally, and then perhaps we would start to make sure that people are not setting off in the first place.
No, quite. We'll come back to that in a moment. I've just got handed a piece of paper here from the Press Association. Suella Braverman has said that between September the 6th and October the 19th, she had sent official documents from her government email to her personal address on 6 occasions. She said that was on occasions when she was conducting meetings virtually or related to public lines to take in interviews. None of the documents in question concern national security, intelligence agency or cybersecurity matters and did not pose any risk to national security. None of the documents were classified as secret or top secret. It seems to me that there is, as you might expect, Alp, a kind of a groundswell of media opinion that Suella Braverman should be sort of, harassed and chased out of office as a result of what she's already resigned for once before. What do you make of that statement? I mean, if it didn't pose a risk to national security and if none of the documents were classified as secret or top secret, what's the big deal?
Well, maybe it has something to do with what Suella Braverman said at the party conference when she said she's not only concerned and will deal with the Channel crisis, but she also says that she's going to tackle the out-of-control legal migration that is going on. Now, I suspect that there are those who are displeased, to say the least, because it affects them if the sort of uncontrolled, cheaper, lower-skilled immigration is denied them. And that has something to do with it. With the opposition, the Labour Party, frankly, any opposition worth its salt would attack the government. But it also, I believe, has something to do with the fact that what Suella Braverman was saying at her party conference actually appealed to a lot of people in and around the country. And that has more to do with the fact that Yvette Cooper, who is a decent person, but frankly, she and her party have absolutely no answer and certainly no policies that would tackle this. And that's why they're avoiding the ball. They're going for the player. Well,
that's it. And I mean, you echoed Natalie Elphick's sentiments yesterday when she said that there is this sort of cabal of left-wing lawyers, of charities, of, people who seem to think that Britain should have an open-door policy to anyone that wants to come here.
There are those who think that is the right thing to do, undoubtedly. It just so happens that the vast majority of people in this country don't believe that, don't want that. If democracy is worth anything, surely it's worth listening to what the voters want and what it is that they're pressing for, rather than what the sort of people that you've just described, Mike, think is necessary or is the right thing to do.
Well, exactly. And just to go back for a second to those Syrian refugees in Turkey, there's supposedly thousands of them assembling effectively on the Greek border so that they can get into the European Union, they can enter the EU, and from whence they can go, presumably, wherever they like, thanks to Schengen. But the EU are trying to stop them coming.
The EU is trying to stop them coming, and in fact, there have been reported cases where they've actually been turned back in sort of mid-flow as they before the boats reach EU territory, before they reach Greece, they have been turned back. Italians did something similar. So it's not as if other countries are not above pushing back the boats. I'm not suggesting, by the way, I know a lot of people say, let's turn the boats back. The channel, frankly, I just don't see that it's practical without risking a lot of lives. And that's something that I think we won't do. We won't turn boats back simply because it means that there is every likelihood that people will die as a result of our doing that.
Well, I think so, and that's exactly the point. You know, I think that turning them back or doing something once they've arrived here is not the solution. The solution surely is to stop them coming in the first place. Alp, thanks very much indeed.